Well, it's been a long time coming. Watching as new recoil commits merge with main for testing, Rust players everywhere have been waiting intensely for this news. With many players who have worked incredibly hard to perfect their aim, worried that the game was about to be destroyed and that all of their hard work would have been for nothing. And on the other side of things, we have players excited at the possibility of a new meta and opening up the game to a lot more players. While certainly we all don't agree on what, most players do agree that something needed to change. The meta has gotten incredibly stale, with players either choosing to stay inside entirely, or not roaming unless they have a Hazy Tommy, or Full Metal AK or MP5. No matter how you put it, there were only really 3 guns that were viable in the game. Of course, we had plenty of people using other tools, but it certainly was not optimal and certainly wasn't meta. Well, it's finally here. The changes have occurred and they are on staging branch, and it's a lot more than just a recoil change. Welcome to staging, where currently for testing we have reworked guns, a crosshair, new sounds, new animations, an entirely new gun, changes to the way drop will affect arrows, and a new attachment. Of course, throughout this entire process, I'm going to be comparing the old with the new, showing you guys both sides so that you can see it without any recoil adjustments and just firing the gun naturally. My biggest takeaway from these changes and playing around with them for a little while is that the recoil patterns no longer follow any silly exaggerated shapes, instead mostly leaning towards a pull-down system with slight variations between each gun. While the AK does still maintain a certain uniqueness with a slight pull to the right where the other guns seem to be mostly a pull down, that does seem to be all we're really dealing with. With a little bit of sway to the left and the right on a couple shots, we're mostly looking at a pull down now. While it does seem to follow a predictable pattern, and I'm sure people are going to work to perfect it, it does seem to deviate, implying that there is some RNG to the shots, meaning you will have to adjust on the fly. In addition to the sound and recoil change, we now have a new attachment, the extended mag, providing a plus 25 ammo capacity to most guns. Unfortunately, it's only most guns and we can't have extra ammo in a Revo or Bolty. This does, however, allow you to change a SAR from being a 16 bullet to 20 bullet gun, a major difference in terms of killing power, especially with this new change. While some of the guns seem to still have some sort of recoil, with the SAR it feels almost non-existent. Basically only maintaining a slight pull down, it almost holds on targets on its own. So this is certainly going to be an interesting one to see if it gets changed soon, as the SAR meta people were worried about might really be a thing. Of course as well, Rust added the new crosshair into the game, giving us a dynamic crosshair for our hip fire. I don't think it is the most intuitive or useful, so I do expect that we are going to see a lot of external crosshairs still being used, at least with the current state of the in-game crosshair. Another visual UI change they did perform is they've added in directional hit markers. This means that when you're in combat and you take a hit, you're going to have a bloody effect on your screen that indicates where you got hit from. Gone are the days of having to rely on sound and hoping that you can figure out where you got shot from. We can now know for sure. This is certainly going to change things and does take away from the realism and the immersion. However, it could be a very good PvP change, especially for more casual players, to help them even the playing field and survive in a fight. However, I could see this being a big issue for the stealthy solo player who is relying on the fact that maybe they won't get noticed as quickly, as that's not going to be a thing anymore. Jumping into the last two things I really want to look at here is the bow and the new gun. The new gun is certainly interesting and it does look like it'll be craftable. However, one notable change that I think a lot of people are missing is their bow change. The bow no longer lines up with a crosshair in center screen. In addition to not having an actual native crosshair, it just doesn't line center. Where this would previously be my center shot for a crosshair, we are now a little to the left. It's a little harder to notice up close, but as you back up, you begin to see that distinct difference of that arrow is just going too much to the left. And you can, however, compensate for this, but it is going to be an adjustment for those trim plates. In addition, it does seem like an arrow fired over long range does have significantly more drop than it used to, perhaps attempting to limit the range of the effective regular bow. This is going to take a little bit of getting used to for my prim fighters, but it's not too big of an adjustment. Finally, the new gun, the HMLMG, high damage, high rate of fire, belt-fed light machine gun. Welcome to the new gun in Rust. Holding a 60-round mag, firing at an incredible rate, this gun is going to be a contender. It looks to me like it might just be the baby cousin to the M249, which we all know is a little bit harder to get, and is probably going to be a tier 3 blueprint. Of course, that is all speculation and subject to change. It is a good looking gun. Let's look at that recoil real quick. It should be a relatively easy gun to control with just slight variations between our shots. And that's it. While still subject to change as it all is... While still subject to change as it's all currently still on staging, these are the main current changes planning for the upcoming patch on June 2nd. What do you think of these changes? Are you excited? Is it going to ruin the game? Make sure to let me know down below in the comments.